Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Beyond Lithium Geochat session, our first of this kind. And the idea for this Geochat came from one recent visit that the people on this chat had in Northern Ontario, visiting some of the projects that Beyond Lithium has there. And I'll introduce the members here: Allan, who's CEO of the company; Tsang, who is VP Exploration; and Graeme, who's a Senior Geologist Advisor to Beyond. And when I'm in the field with the geologists that are on the screen here, and my associate Allan, who's CEO of the company, I'm a capital markets advisor and co-founder of Beyond Lithium. When we're all together in the field, there's a lot of talk about exploration and what the plans of the company are. We spend considerable amount of time in the car going from the hotel to the projects and back, and there's interesting conversation about geology, about exploration. And so we do want to demystify some of that and explain the exploration process, and more particularly the exploration process for lithium. But before we start, I'd like to give the opportunity for the three other members here to introduce themselves. So Al, if you could tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thanks, Alain. So prior to joining Beyond as president and CEO, I spent 47 years in the Canadian securities industry as an advisor working for various and different IROC firms. My last tenure was with Haywood, and while I was at Haywood, I became reacquainted with Alain Lambert, whom I did business with from back in the early 90s. So one of the companies that I did an IPO for was Beyond Minerals at the time, which is now Beyond Lithium. So, for me, when I was invited to join the company in March of 2023, it was a pretty easy decision because I already knew the players, had some hand in the structure, and my friends and clients were already involved as shareholders. So shortly thereafter, I kind of leaned on my two geo buds, Lawrence and Graeme, whom we've been friends and colleagues for well over a decade. And they were also interested in the lithium business and thought we could all have a little bit of fun and build up some serious and significant value for shareholders. So that's my intro, and I'll leave it at that. There's about 30 million shares outstanding. If we continue with our successes, we should over time be able to exhibit some pretty good market torque. So there's my promo, and thank you very much.
Lawrence, over to you.
Thank you. I've been having a geo for 15, 16 years. As Al talked about, like Graeme and I, we know each other, work together for over a decade now, mainly with Vascot. And I'm still helping out with Vascot, like part of the company, part of the team, able to take the project from early stage to now almost into production. But at the same time, I really enjoy exploration, and in the last couple of years started to look into the EV sector and then got into lithium space, and just happened Al and Alain has this great opportunity here with Beyond, with all the projects. So I see the opportunity to get to keep working with Al and Graeme, and also with all the great projects we have. So join the Beyond, and now just having the great team again. So we're looking forward to more exciting years to come.
Graeme, over to you.
Oh, lucky me. I'm the old geo that wants to retire, and they keep dragging me back. But no, I've got over 40 odd years. I won't say exactly how many years in Bush, and I love geology. I mainly work with major companies most of the time, looking for base metals and precious metals. And again, like everybody summed up, we're all friends, and they tempted me back in to learn about the lithium space. So it's really exciting and fun. Fun being the operative word too.
So maybe Graeme, I'll start with you. I know, guys, when we were talking, I thought I was going to give the first question to Lawrence, but I've changed my mind. So Graeme, you go first, if that's okay with you. So Graeme, you triggered a thought because you said, yeah, you're learning about lithium. everyone listening today would know that there's a tremendous amount of exploration going on in Canada. We want to focus on hard rock lithium exploration. And so the first question is a general one, and obviously Lawrence, feel free to comment as well. But Graeme, where should we be looking for lithium? What kind of favorable geology do we have? We want to focus in Ontario because that's where Beyond is, but there are a lot of success that we've seen also in Quebec. And so where are the favorable areas and what's fertile for lithium exploration?
Yeah, good fundamental question, Alain. And it comes back to the basics. In a lot of ways, the chemistry of lithium is going to dictate where you look for. So two key features that make lithium a good battery. It's light element. It's number 3 on the periodic table. And it's got a really high ionic energy. So it likes to move electrons and save electrons. Makes a good thing for battery. And it also tells you about where you're going to look for it in the rocks. And the best hard rock lithium deposits around the world are in these old 2.5 billion year old cratons. And basically the geology in Ontario is the same geology that extends across into Quebec. So really the favorability of lithium in Ontario and Quebec, Australia, Africa, South America are kind of the same fundamental areas. And what we're typically looking for is intrusive complexes that have intruded into generally intrusive and sedimentary environments, because those are environments that the properties of lithium are going to collect in. And we'll get into that as we move on. I don't know if Lawrence wants to add anything to that or not.
No, I think that's right. Basically, that's the source of it, right? So we need the source to generate that fluid to really form the end member, the LCD pegmatites we look for. So we have the source, we have the craton, we got the right geological settings just for finding the source, and geology doesn't stop at the provincial boundary. So Ontario, Quebec, we got the same thing there. Yeah.
So with that, then I do have a question for you, Lawrence, and it relates to the way in which companies should conduct exploration. Beyond Lithium has spoken a lot in its news releases about phase 1 exploration, I should say. So could you describe what is phase 1 exploration? What's the purpose of it? What are you trying to achieve, and what are the particular things that happen on the ground during phase 1 exploration?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I think quite a few people asked it the same question as well, and I would say just from the day we Beyond option those properties, we have 64 projects over 150,000 hectares. The largest greenfield exploration lithium company in Ontario. When I looked at that, okay, we've done over 4,000 hours of desktop study. But how do we really track almost all the projects in a really systematic way and an efficient way? So we adopted this like different phases of exploration program. So what we call a phase 1, basically like a having boots on the ground. We talk about each project spending 3 to 5 field days to really establish the geological background and geochem background from sampling. So that's what we want to establish. Referring back to almost the first question, we want to get to the ground to check, do we have the right host rock? Could we find the source of it? Do we have the right intrusive? Do we have the meta sediments? Do we have the structures on our projects? And then we collect samples like from 30 to 50 samples, depends on the size of the project, so that we can establish that geochemical background of each of the projects and could tell us, do we have that elevated rare earth elements or different ratios to tell us, are we in a fertile area? So are we in the ballpark of finding that potential lithium LCT pegmatites? So that's our phase 1. And it involves very, very basic mappings, really try to cover the entire project and grab samples. We want to have people there to see what we really have.
And following up on that, Lawrence, and so the next question will be for you, Graeme. So yep. I have had the pleasure of being in the field with all of you guys several times in Ontario, looking at various Beyond Lithium projects where phase one exploration has taken place. So we go on these properties together. We look at maps and laptops, data on the back of the pickup truck before we start walking. And Graeme, so when you see these results that we have had and we've received assay results, and you look at all these maps and you're on the ground, what is it that you do with that data, and what is it that you are looking for?
At the end of the day, what Lawrence and his team is trying to do is for most mineral deposits, there's a sort of a conventional playbook, step 1 through step 10 on how to look for these things. And other than that academic generic model for lithium deposits, there is no real formal playbook. I think it's important to realize Beyond's a different kind of exploration company. Most of the people that have developed resources in the last few years went to a historic spodumene occurrence and have expanded on it and developed a resource. Whereas Beyond is tackling numerous properties basically at stage 1, and that's where Lawrence is trying to develop it. But we talk a lot of geological terminology. It's just a way of simplifying simple processes. So we're looking for fundamentals like pegmatite dikes in the field. We'll talk about crystal fractionation. It's a pretty simple process, but you actually have to do it twice in lithium systems. Again, it's back to first principles. The properties of lithium, it's a light element, so it likes to sit on the top of rocks and run away. And with its high ionic energy, it likes to run away. So you have a fundamental issue of how do you concentrate lithium, and you have to trap it and concentrate it. And that's a really tricky thing to do. But I think we're getting a pretty good system figured out here on how to narrow it down. I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
I wanted more, but I'll come back to you, Graeme, here in a second. I want to ask something to Al. So Al, over your 47-year career financing mining companies and really backing exploration teams, I'm sure you've had some success and you've seen some failures. What is it that you look for what was it that you were looking for when you were backing explorers?
Well, several things, but firstly, it's who the explorers are, who the individuals are. There's many people out there, but you try to, associate yourself with people that have been successful, and you base your picks on their background and their successes. So that's one of the most important things. But then, they can only look at the properties that you acquire for them as well. So you have to have a property package that has potential, and you have to have individuals that know how to crack the code, let's say, that are good explorers. And I see that in spades here. Our land position in Ontario is second to none. It's vast and it's not moose pasture. When you look at our maps, you think, oh, these guys went around and cherry picked where everybody else had a discovery. But that's not the case at all. It looks that way, but it's just simply not true. We had other fundamental reasons for picking up every hectare that we picked up. And then when you are fortunate enough, as I am, and you are, to be associated with people like Lawrence and Graeme, you narrow the odds down. We'll put it this way. Exploration is a challenge, and the only way that we can create sustainable value for shareholders is through successful exploration. At the end of the day, it's all about what you get through the drill bit, but you're going to have a really hard time getting there unless you have the right team. And in my mind, we clearly have the right team. If there's anything of significance to be discovered, if our team can't discover them, they're probably not there. But optimistically, I think we've already demonstrated that we are very capable. And hey, we've only been doing this for a few months, and look what we've done so far. We've advanced 17 projects into tier two. 17 of them. We're talking about one or two of them now that kind of jump out more, but they only jump out more because we've been spending more time on them. I have no doubt that we'll have many more that will be as exciting as the two we're kind of focusing on now. So those are the things that I look for. And this one was tailor made. And then, when the field team through Lawrence and Graeme came together, to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. There's no guarantees with exploration, but I think we've narrowed the odds down dramatically, and I think we have a very, very good chance to be successful.
Thank you, Al. I'm going to go back to you, Graeme, and that one is not meant to be provocative, but it will provoke some good reactions by investors. Because I speak with a lot with investors, and I believe that a lot of them have been conditioned to focus on assay results, right? So, and I'm sure, Allan, when you were in the business, you'd have clients calling you and say, well, when are the assay results coming out, and so on and so forth. I've even seen people in Ontario that back various lithium explorers go back and forth between, well, this company has a sample of 4.5% lithium, and the other one 7, and the other one 3, and I like to say to them that a particular sample on a property is not necessarily meaningful or indicative of much. Is my statement right, Graeme, or should it be qualified?
It's always a dilemma. That's the story of my life. Everybody wants the end product results. And really what we're doing is we're trying to get there on a number of fronts. And we're trying to be systematic about it. Are we in the right environment for a big lithium system? How do we narrow it down and find that big lithium system? So it's back to a numbers game. You've got 64 projects. We're trying to advance all of those. And the dilemma is once you're in the lithium field, then it becomes a numbers game. But we're trying to see these big systems on the outside and work our way in. We'll eventually, as we have on Muir Falls, got into the spodumene lithium system. And so far, the results are good. But we're just at the very starting point. We don't even know if our original discoveries are the good ones. So the investors have to be a little more patient. But I think in the long term, we're out to deliver world-class systems through Beyond here. We're not looking for the poor cousins next door. It's a different story.
So Lawrence, sort of the same question to you about what is the significance of, let's say, one particular sample that's elevated in lithium versus one that a different company might have that's not the same, and I know that the way we look at it, and I know the way you like to do things, which is the right way, is to plot all of that on a map and a regional map sometimes to really have a fundamental understanding of the geological system that we deal with. But what would you say to retail investors that, let's say, if they called you and pressed you for assays, and how would you put that in the greater context of what it is that you're trying to achieve?
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's the numbers game, but at the same time, we doing it systematically and scientifically, because visually finding spot and we can map it out. Yeah, we know we have something, but at the same time, not every project will be that straightforward where the spot would just sit in the middle of the road or next to the road. And from being an explorer and as an exploration company, to have so many good projects, we have to find a way to explore for targets that could be blind. We could be close to something, but we just could not see it. So that's why we are doing that. Back to phase 1 sampling, we are not just sampling the pegmatites, we also try to establish a baseline in the host rock, in the meta sediments or in the granite. So that's why at the EFOS, we have samples around the spodumene pegmatites, seeing the elevated cesium signatures. And then that tells us, okay, if we have other samples in the sediments or in the granite showing that signature, but we haven't seen the spot. But that would tell us, okay, we could be close to something. So that's really improve our toolkit for the field guys to say, okay, by some of this signature, we could be close to something. That's the direction we're going to explore. So that's the patient, I think, that Graeme referred to. We're going to ongoing sampling, mapping, or different exploration methods to add to our toolbox. How do we improve our odds of finding more spodumene pegmatites down the road? That's why we have all this phase 1, phase 2 is to equip ourselves to understand our project better. And every project would have its own signatures and something different unique to it. Yes, we have that generic LCT pegmatites deposit model. That's a good start, but I think like even an Ear Falls or Crossgrade Lake would have its own unique system to it.
So that brings up Cosgrave and unique system, and so I'm going to go back to you here, Graeme, because I was there at Cosgrave when we were there, and I remember that there was quite a considerable amount of beryl that was on surface, and we had assayed those and that general area, and the results came back, and the lithium was there, but it wasn't elevated, and the other elements were also present. And while some investors, if they had looked at those results, might have been disappointed, you were actually pretty excited about what you saw. So could you, and then we start talking about the Pluton or the intrusive stock. So could you explain, Graeme, a little bit of what we found at Cosgrave?
Yeah, it's a great question, Alain. And Cosgrave actually is a real special setting. You summed it up perfectly, and I think some of our prospectors were disappointed with the low grades that we had in the system. But considering where we are in that geologic environment, we are actually in a special place, and the values we got out of with those beryl crystals is telling us something really exciting, and people don't appreciate that. Again, like you said earlier, everybody wants the exciting lithium number. We're being a little more academic and looking at the whole process here, and that's going to come into a story which I don't know if you want to get into or not. Sort of a fundamental story with plutons and dikes and what we call crystal fractionation. So the short of it is, I'll kind of leave the crystal fractionation is pretty simple. It's changing the chemistry of your molten rocks by not adding. It's actually dropping minerals out of the system. So your composition of the rocks, if you drop a lot of your minerals out, gets elevated. So what you're doing, in summary, in a Pluton is you're driving all the light elements and the gases and fluids to the top of the Pluton, and your heavy iron-rich minerals and stuff are dropping to the bottom of the Pluton. So that's crystal fractionation. And in lithium systems, they are so hard to trap. You actually have to have two phases of crystal fractionation to make a lithium spodumene showing. So you have to do crystal fractionation in your Pluton to get the volatiles, and the volatiles are what make all pegmatites. So it's volatiles blowing out of the top of the Pluton and going into a dike and basically condensing there and cooling. But then lithium is such a grumpy mineral, it actually has to crystal fractionate in the pegmatite dike to finally precipitate. It's super saturated at the end where you form your spodumene. And that's what's exciting about Cosgrave. We have a super evolved Pluton coming out of the glacier batholith, which is a huge Pluton or a batholith. So you've got thousands of cubic kilometers of rock melting and concentrating and upgrading your lithium content. You go to a second stage where you have crystal fractionation in the Cosgrave Pluton, And what's exciting about the pegmatites and the barrel crystals we see is those are pegmatites. They're the leftover junk left behind after the volatiles blow out of Cosgrave. But we've got the plumbing to a big lithium system. And as we step out into the dike swarms around the Pluton, we're seeing that crystal fractionation in the pegmatite dikes. So somewhere out there, we haven't found it yet, but there's a huge plumbing system for a big lithium deposit, and that's pretty exciting. And Cosgrave is a special place where it didn't crystal fractionate twice, it actually fractionated 3 times. So it really bodes well for the plumbing out there. And
Lawrence, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the last press release we put out a map, and that's really got me and Graeme excited. We after we announced the discovery of that Allan Graeme Pluton, we had another more like Paul Bassett who went back in there to do more mapping, and we are really mapping out that zonation of mineral zonation. So that really showing that transition from your Pluton and that fascination towards away from the Pluton. So that really excites us, and we do plan to go back because of this great result that we were able to get from our second mapping program there. So that's pretty neat. Showing the fundamental, we understand how LCD pegmatites are formed, and we follow through. We made a discovery of the Pluton. We follow the systematic mapping program that we designed, and then we're able to now see that zoning. So that's showing by having a good fundamental understanding of how a deposit is formed, and then you design your exploration program based on that, that would give you a higher level of success.
Well, that brings me to my other question. Nice segue, and we did not even rehearse this, right? So which brings us to the phase 2 exploration. So Lawrence, how do you and your team decide which properties make it to phase 2 exploration, and what is phase 2 exploration?
Right. So yeah, so everything really based out from our result from phase 1, and very important is that we get that field observation and then the field mapping from our geos and prospectors. Do we seeing that like the structures? Do we have that contact, that regional structures? Are we close to the sub-province boundary, such and such? And when we look at the intrusive, do we see that right composition? And when we get the result of the lab, do we see that elevated cesium, tantalum, lithium, and then we look at the KRB ratio and such and ACNK ratio around the area to show that, okay, number one, we got to say we are close to or proximity to a fertile Pluton, so we have the source. And then secondly, we do see a good structures, which is the corridor for LCD pegmatite to form. And then do we see that fractionated samples? So if we see all of them, and then basically telling us, okay, we have that fundamental of for formation of a LCD pegmatite deposit. We have the source, we have the structures, we have the trap. So that's where we say, okay, this project has the potential for us to continue to do our exploration. So that will bring us to decide to move to the phase 2 program. So for phase 2 program, it means we're going to spend more times on each of the projects. Phase 1 program really spending that 3-5 days time, and then that's really minimal prospecting. So phase 2, we're going to have more time, do more detailed mappings, and grab more samplings to really try to can we narrow down to smaller areas to do to potentially find that elevated samples, or eventually that spodumene zones that we could find, just like EFOS.
It's great, thank you. So I'm going to go back to you, Al, and go back to your experience. So you have seen many exploration programs unfold during your career, so you have a good sense of sort of the speed at which it goes, and what are some of the things that might lead to success or not. Obviously, Mother Nature always decides the end game, but how would you describe the progress made by Beyond Lithium's team compared to some of the other projects you've been involved in the past?
Well, I'd say the pace of exploration has been pretty intense. Fortunately for us, through Graeme's connections and Lawrence's connections in Ontario, and also with the help of Jason and Jace, our two main prospector partners, we've been able to get some pretty good people in the field in a year when there's been a lot of activity there. So I don't know that there are too many companies that have covered as much ground as we have. We have like 64 chances for success. I think we've covered something like 50 of them or close to that. Lawrence is more sure than me. And out of that, we've already, got 17. We moved into phase two. I mean, quite frankly and realistically, if we had half of that at this stage, I'd be happy. But our guys have worked really hard, put in a lot of hours, and more importantly, they know what they're doing. So I'd say our chances for success, just because of the vast exposure we have to all those hectares, is enhanced. But also, the work that we've been able to achieve and the goals that we've been able to achieve this year are pretty incredible. And I'm not sure that any other team could accomplish that. If they can, my hat's off to them. But we've got some pretty special guys that are committed and they know what they're doing. So, the odds are in our favor. 64 chances for success.
So, Graeme, I'd like to go back to our last visit. It was a week ago or 10 days ago. And we were at Ear Falls. Can you tell us what you saw, what your thoughts were? That's where we made the spodumene discovery. And what do you think the next step should be?
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting that we saw the spodumene occurrences. They're not super wide dikes now, but I mean, certainly from our first round of sample and assays, pretty decent lithium numbers. But what's exciting is that's a brand new system. And from our preliminary work, we're really comfortable that the Wenasaga batholith that we pretty much cover with the property now is a fractionated LCT intrusive system. And we're already seeing developed spodumene systems. And there's a lot of features. We haven't talked about zoning in the pegmatites yet, where you see, peripheral coarse-grained pegmatite feldspars, and then zoning into maybe muscovite and tourmaline, and then sort of quartz cores. What that's really doing is telling us that our pegmatites are doing the crystal fractionation. So you have the ability to saturate your spodumene lithium end member. And guess what? We already have stumbled on spodumene dikes. And I think that's just the beginning of a big system. And I think Lawrence is being quite conservative with his 1 kilometer strike length right now. That's kind of where we've seen spodumene dikes sprinkled along the structure. But we also have like the Sandy Creek barrel system that's more than 10 kilometers on strike. So I really am excited about the potential of that area. And the government mapping there is that whole entire sheet probably has a couple hundred outcrops on it. So it's brand new virgin territory to go exploring. So that's got me pretty upbeat.
So, Lawrence, what's next for Ear Falls? We've said we were going to be drilling. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. So and Graeme talk about that zoning. So, and that's part of our I would say phase 2 program that is ongoing. So we are currently doing more detailed mapping. We are flying a high resolution drone to take some pictures around the spot area so that we can do detailed mappings right on the high resolution drone pictures. So I think that would really give us a good idea. Have we started seeing zonation within our pegmatite zones? And then ongoing, we're gonna do channel samplings of the spodumene dikes. And then we got the okay to do a stripping program so we can really expose the area to really see the density or the true width of the spodumene zones. And then we're gonna plan to do some AQ drilling to just test those shallow targets like 30, plus meters, 30 to 50 meters of the spodumene dikes to really just showing that, okay, step by step, we've done phase 1, we've done phase 2, going to do channel sampling, stripping, and then have a few short holes to really show that, okay, we do have a system going and we do have a lot of exploration upside to it. We expanded the project of EFOS almost 6 times, and we have a lot of brand new areas to cover. We're going to basically treat the new area as a new project. We're going to have guys out there to do prospecting, to collect a lot more samples to really show, just want to establish that baseline again. Where are the hotter zones? Where are the hotter areas to really continue the exploration at EFOS?
Okay, thank you. You were going to say something, Graeme?
Yeah, it's a good chance to jump in. I think it's important for the investors to understand why we talk about other elements. Like, why do we talk about rubidium? Why do we talk about cesium and tantalum and that? You've got 5 alkali metals started with lithium, sodium, potassium. They're hard things to deal with because they're everywhere on the earth. But cesium and rubidium are alkali metals, and they behave similar to lithium. Rubidium, we use that a lot because it's more abundant in the earth than lithium. So when we see a rubidium or a cesium trend, that's just as exciting as seeing a lithium trend. They behave very similar. And when Lawrence is talking about fractionation plots, what you're really looking at is you have a rubidium versus cesium plot. If you just have a mesal pattern on that plot, it says you're not fractionating. You'll never make a lithium deposit. When you see a fractionation plot that forms a linear trend, that's saying your dike is fractionating, and there is a really good chance you'll have a lithium spodumene phase in that dike. And the other thing is, when you're sampling in more detail in stage 2, you can actually look at zoning patterns in your pegmatite dike. So you're seeing zoning in it. I'm in the barrel system. I need to move that way to look for the lithium system. So it gives you these really clear vectors to target, but we've got to get in there to get enough detail to do that. And it's really showing a consistent pattern. It makes it quite straightforward on how to target the spodumene end member, because it's a very small percentage of your whole system.
Well, thank you, Graeme, and you hit on a lot of good points, which and objective here, which is to share your experience about how to explore for lithium, because I assume what you're saying surely applies to what we're doing at Cosgrave, at Ear Falls, and others, but surely it applies to all the other explorers, doesn't it?
It does, Alain, but we've talked about that too. We're interested in what the other people are doing, and I've read a lot of technical reports on deposits, and nothing against other people. It's pretty convenient when you're sitting on a spodumene showing and drilling it off. All anybody and the investors care about is that lithium grade, how big and how much and what's the grade. We're kind of a step earlier looking for the new big ones. So we're playing around with the elements and the ratioing, but looking at the basic geology here, we're developing some pretty good tools, including the LIBS analyzer and that are giving us a really good database to key in on things. And a lot of people aren't reporting that. So we're actually building an in-house database that we can use to keep expanding things for Beyond.
Well, that's great. Thank you again, Graeme. Thank you, Lawrence. So one last thought, Allan, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm sure we could be going for a long time. That's certainly the types of discussions that we have when we drive back from a long day in the field, and why I learned so much from you guys, and I'm sure those watching today are learning quite a bit as well. And so we'll do it again. But I want to give Allan the last thought, and what should people expect from Beyond moving forward, Al, or any other thoughts you might want to share to conclude this session?
Well, I just like to say, with the flow through funds that we've raised, we've spent every penny. Lawrence and Graeme have spent every penny very carefully. A lot of thought goes into it. It's like that old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, but we are building an excellent database, and we've only really been doing this for a handful of months. So I think we have an awful lot to look forward to. When this season winds down, we'll, go back to our respective spaces and think about what we've done this year and plan an even more exciting and a more aggressive program for next year on the tier 2 projects. I think that's where we'll really have a lot of fun. And right now, with the $9 million market cap, roughly speaking, and all of these properties and the talented people to work them, I think we represent an excellent opportunity. But people have to understand exploration is a methodical process. You just don't go out. I mean, I guess you could go out there and nail it on your first shot, but that's like one in a zillion. But I think we're just going to take our time. We're going to literally look under every rock and into every rock. And I think our odds of creating a successful exploration company are extremely high. And for those of you that are shareholders, we thank you. We're careful with your dollars. We're doing our best to create value. And for those that aren't that hear this, I hope you enjoy the educational part of it, which is the purpose of this particular chat. And anything that we can help anybody with, any questions, feel free to call. And in the meantime, thank you, shareholders, and come on in, the guys that aren't. Doors open.
Thank you very much, and we'll do it again, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.